Hold on a second. Still working on Rumble. One more thing with Rumble here. Just give me a moment. I'll be ready to go. Every single time you do a Rumble, you have to get a brand new live stream key. It takes a little bit to get going here. Second. I'm going to have to go bring the studio in.
Hey, I'm a trainer. I'd like you to join me Monday time for open camp. Don't fit.
Yes, that's right. Bring up one camp. Again, that's a nice MP Eastern UFOs from the crashes. Radio from South. You to expect us. We're already here.
We did not even mission. We're on a mission that with the telling the shoot him. This darn that. Cool.
That's for me.
Living a destroying the deep criminal power structure.
We are free.
Wow, we're really having trouble with the stream tonight. It's not us. Just hang on.
Supported talk radio station for yourself. Revolution Radio, where information.
Down the thunder, well, now you got
Revolution Radio.
Here we go, hour one. Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. Got a great report for you tonight. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. We had a fantastic weekend at the Patriot Voice event, Double Down in Las Vegas. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to tell you more about it later on tonight, but first we have a lot of things to go over. There are things happening around us that are affecting your everyday lives, affecting your business, affecting your vacation plans, and certainly your holiday plans. I have talked to you a few times about the Asian blockade. Well, I've got a little bit more detail on it now. The effects are going to be wide-reaching, and there are going to be casualties, as there are in any war. The Asian blockade is no exception. Thank you very much. Flawless in USA says he watched the Las Vegas event on the live stream. That was pretty cool, wasn't it? Yes, it was. And Channel Changer says he got his report. That's thumbs up. I have an update for you tonight as well on that. So don't go away. This is very, very important information. There are, as everyone now knows, a surplus of trucks in California that are trying to get these shipping containers from the coast to their destinations. There are only a fixed number of cranes to offload those ships and to load the containers onto trucks. Okay, this is just the way it goes. Container ships make money by moving containers, right? Not by sitting at anchor off the coast of California. I am the only one calling this an Asian blockade. There are others that are going to come around. I have now been on other live streams. I have spoken to state senators. I have spoken to people in other states face to face, very quiet about the Asian blockade, and they're starting to get it, okay? We don't need military ships parked off the coast of Shanghai or Shenzhen. We only need to stop the ships from returning to those ports, okay? How do you stop them from doing that? You stop them from unloading on the west coast of the U.S., okay? Now, the big question everyone is asking, yes, that's right, Wrecking Ball is on Twitch, Wrecking Ball 1776. He says the ships in the Long Beach, which is the Long Beach Harbor area, they have what are called anchor points out there, where normally they're able to anchor 2 to 4 ships. They're now anchoring 8 to 10 ships in these areas. Some of the ships are not at anchor. They're sitting there with their engines idling, keeping themselves afloat and in line with the other ships. But they're stacked up like dominoes, he says. Thanks to Biden and his destruction of our country, only wanting to worry how many Frankenstein shots you can put in people's arms. You see, that's what I'm going to clear up tonight, Wrecking Ball. That's what I'm going to clear up. If we stop the ships from going back to China to load up again, to export from China, to import to the United States, 2 things happen. First of all, Americans on the ground level, on the Walmart level, begin to realize just how much of our economy, our cash flow, our point of sale comes from China. We didn't really know. When you buy a bottle of Advil, there's no Chinese writing on the outside of that. It doesn't say made in China. But if you peel the label off and look at the plastic bottle underneath, of course, it says it comes from China. Same thing with Tylenol. Same thing with aspirin. Same thing with all of the liquid cold relievers that you take. Same with all the vitamins that you see, all the polo shirts and gym shorts and all that stuff. All that stuff. A. Carpenter's on D Live. He says, I am in Orange County. See those ships stacked up is interesting. Hopefully they don't snap another pipeline again. Yeah, see, their anchors kind of drag around on the bottom. We already had one oil spill because of that. So here's the issue. If we stop them from unloading, they can't go back to China and load up again. What it does, it slows the cash flow in China. Do we care? I mean, do you really care if you run out of toilet paper, or run out of disposable diapers, or run out of polo shirts or cheap ankle socks? Do you care? Really, is your life going to end? No. When China slows down, the Chinese bond market just keeps right on rolling forward. It's like a giant iron wheel, and it's rolling, and they're running from it. Okay? If we keep slowing the cash flow, it is going to crush their bond market. Now, why is that important? Because the largest bond markets crash first, okay? Which are the real estate bonds. They make up nearly 70% of China's GDP. Now, you'll recall in 1933, when Roosevelt became president, we'd already gone through the great crash of 1929, right? The stock market had crashed. And yes, people lost money, people jumped at it. But was everybody in the stock market? No, not everybody was in the stock market. Just like not everybody's in the stock market today. In fact, probably less people were in the stock market than that are in it now, because now we have 401ks, and we have mutual funds, and we have, account managers that diversify stocks and pension funds and all of that. But in those days, it was the people trying to make a quick buck, trying to take advantage of the growth of the economy, and so they were invested in the stock market. But that didn't really break America. No, it was 4 years later, after Hoover was run out of office and replaced with the flamboyant New York governor, a liberal, a fascist, a close friend of Adolf Hitler, a close friend of Mussolini, his fascist buddy, his pen pal. It took the crash of the bond market to really eliminate the middle class. You know why? Because the bond market backed the real estate. That's what hurt everyone. Because in America, our home, our farm, that's our big investment. That's our big return, right? So thank you, Astral King, for moving from YouTube to D Live, because we're going to say goodbye to YouTube in just a second here. We're going to get into some areas that YouTube doesn't like, and Google routinely violates our civil rights by suppressing our free speech, and so we don't let Yahoo host our programs for very long. I want to get this point out there because we have so many subscribers on YouTube, and they will get this eventually. Our bond market is backed by about 9% by real estate bonds. It's high, but it isn't solid. That is to say, we're diversified. If we have another real estate crash like we did in 2008, I don't think we will, because we don't have the same lending practices that we had during the Bush administration and the Clinton administration, where urban leagues were required to loan money to people that had no business borrowing money. And I'm not talking about people of color. Forget about that. It has nothing to do with that. I'm talking about hairdressers and house painters and landscapers who owned 2, 3, 4 properties and they were renting them out. Smart idea, good investment. The problem is they didn't have any skin in the game. They didn't put any down payment on those houses. The banks were 100, sometimes 105% leveraged on these. And these were mortgage-backed securities. They were underwritten by the FHA and by other organizations, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. They were underwritten. That is to say, when you put these mortgages together in a pile, they make a chunk worth $5, $10, $15 million, and that's called a mortgage-backed security, and it trades on the market. Okay, people buy them at a discount, and the yields change, and they back a lot of what are called derivatives. I know you've heard the term derivative, and just it's complex, but let me explain it this way. You borrow $100,000 to buy a house. I know it's cheap. I'm just doing it because the math is easy. And let's say that you have a 6 or 7% interest on that house. Sounds high now, but it wasn't too high during those days. I made 9.5. I made 11% home loans in those days. What happens is you make payments that include interest and principal, right? So instead of repaying $100,000, you're repaying like $240 or $270. You know, you're over 30 years repaying a lot of money. So what happens is the value of the mortgage is based upon future conditions. In other words, they derive present value out of future value. That's called a derivative, okay? They're deriving value from the future payments. So they look at it and say, oh, this person made 3 payments, the first 3 payments, so they're a good risk, and it's all underwritten by the government. Who would argue with Standard & Poor's? Who would argue with FHA? Who would argue with Freddie Mac? This is a good, solid mortgage-backed security. Well, the problem was that these people who had no business borrowing money to buy, especially income-producing properties, let alone single-family homes, they weren't making their payments. And they were going 3, 4, 5 months, 2 years, 3 years without making their payments. Now, they didn't want to start a big wave of foreclosures because that, of course, would devalue the bond market. So what they did is they just traded away the securities. And because they're underwritten, nobody actually goes down to Boca Raton. Nobody goes to Oklahoma City to actually check these neighborhoods to see if those properties are worth it, right? They just don't. That's why The Big Short, remember the movie The Big Short, right, with Christian? Yeah, okay, that was based on a true story where they did some citizen investigation, and they went down and found out that a lot of these homes did not have the owners in them. The people hadn't paid rent in months and months. They were just living in the house and paying utility bills. Nobody cared. Nobody came and got them. Nobody evicted them, so they just stayed. And what happened was, in very short order, the bond market collapsed in 2008, and it nearly wrecked the world again. And when Obama became president, he inherited all of that crash. He didn't make it any better because he began exporting jobs like crazy. But we really needed the exact opposite to happen. Now, I will say that the bond market in 2008 was not as leveraged in the sense that not everybody was not making their payments like it was in 1933. In 1933, when they crashed the bond market, they did it by squeezing the money supply. They had a goal in mind, and the goal in mind was to smash the middle class. They needed to smash the middle class because the middle class was beginning to take some of the planet that had been reserved by the elite, and they didn't like it. So they smashed the middle class, and millions of people died, and millions more died in war, a 30 years long war that went along with this. It took a short break and went back at it. So all of this kind of mixed together to fix the world for the elite. They made tons of money off both sides of the war, and the middle class went to war and died. So the exposure of China is quite a bit different, because the largest bond markets, they do crash first, which are the real estate bonds that make up 70%, not 9%, 69% of China's GDP, their gross domestic product, is backed by real estate bonds. This is why this is significant. This is why the Asian blockade is so important. To prove that Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals do not understand what is happening is easy. It's a crazy how they don't understand this. Someone knows what I know, okay? Somebody knows what I know. Somebody sees how the CCP is pissed about this. And officials at San Pedro Bay ports said in a statement this weekend that they're going to begin fining not the crane operators, not the truck drivers. Nope. They're going to they're going to put a fine that's imposed on the ship in an effort to improve cargo movement and congestion and record volume. So starting November 1st, the ports will charge shipping companies that fall into one of two categories: containers scheduled to move by truck and containers moved by rail. In the case of containers scheduled to move by truck, shipping companies will be charged for every container that stays in marine terminals for 9 days or longer. For those moving by rail, shipping companies will be charged if the container stays for 3 days or longer. Companies will incur a fine of $100 per container, which will increase to $100 in $100 increments per container per day. So that's $200 the second day, $300 the third day, $400 the fourth day. You get it. The fees collected will be reinvested into programs aimed at enhancing efficiency, accelerating cargo velocity, and addressing congested impacts throughout the San Pedro Bay. This is a quote from the Port of Los Angeles woke executive director Gene Soroka. He said, "We must expedite the movement of cargo through the ports to work down the number of ships at anchor. Approximately 40% of containers on our terminals today fall into the two categories. If we can clear this idling cargo, we'll have much more space on our terminals to accept empties, to handle exports, and to improve fluidity for the wide range of cargo owners who utilize our ports." Well, Mr. Port of Los Angeles Executive Director Gene Soroka hasn't been to the port lately. He hasn't noticed that the cranes are not moving. Normally, those cranes can float a ship and stack those containers right on a truck in a long line. They set it down and go, set it down and go. These crane operators are the best in the world, okay? They're union workers. They know what they're doing. But the cranes aren't running. The cranes only run a few minutes a day. That's it. They only run a few minutes a day. The ships stay at dock for days, not hours like they used to. The new policy was developed in coordination with the Biden-Harris Supply Chain Disruption Task Force, as well as the Department of Transportation and various supply chain stakeholders. I guess little Peter Buttcrack doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't realize that there's an Asian blockade that's going on, that somebody in the longshoremen's unit knows, the union knows what I know, that this is a systemic slowdown of cash to China. Yes, there are going to be casualties here in the United States. So what? If we want to buy something, if we have the money to buy something, if we want to whip out our checkbook and we want to buy something here, guess what? Somebody's going to make it. Somebody's going to step up and make it. Vietnam will make it. Malaysia will make it. Brazil will make it. Colombia will make it. America will make it. We're not going to wait on the Chinese. I'm not waiting for the Chinese to come back before I buy my stuff. I'll just shop someplace else. Well, there are roughly 77 ships currently waiting outside of docks in the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, California, and they're carrying a staggering $24 billion worth of goods waiting to be offloaded. And guess what? A lot of it is rotting. And according to Goldman economist Ronnie Walker, the situation does not look set to improve in the immediate future as officials struggle to find a solution to the issue. I spoke to a major food supplier today. There are several. You see their trucks around town. I don't need to mention any names, but I spoke to a major food supplier today, and they said it's a crapshoot. We don't know what we're going to get. We don't know if we're going to get chicken or meatballs or tomato sauce. We're out of the wrapping that goes around drinking straws, you know, the little individual cellophane wrappers. We're out of cellophane wrap, which means you can't put food in display cases. Everything has to be prepared from frozen to fresh. There's no display. A lot of little things, plastic spoons, all that stuff comes from China, see, and it's a crapshoot. They don't know what they're going to get. Now, the food companies are making money because, for instance, a 1 gallon jug of soybean oil, 1 gallon jug of soy oil. Normally, you can buy it for about $15. Now it's $55. $55. Everything prepared with that now is going to change. Backlogs and elevated shipping costs are likely to persist at least through the middle of next year. That was confirmed today when I interviewed the food company. No immediate solution for the underlying supply chain imbalance at U.S. ports is available. They don't know because they're not in charge of it. I think I know who is, but I'm not ready to say yet. About 250,000 containers of goods are currently stacked up on the docks due to delayed pickups from chassis shortages and a lack of space in rail yards and warehouses. And this is causing dozens of ships to back up at anchor outside the ports. Well, I have to tell you, this is the word. Don't nothing move around here but what don't move to the union. If it's in a union warehouse, it's on a union dock, it's running by a union crane, you're driving your truck onto union property. Now you understand. But wait, you said, the unions, don't they work for Virtual Joe? Well, no, they don't. No, they don't. What is that, Alan? Days ago, I ordered a tech item from China. That may have been a mistake due to the supply chain issues. I made my trip this weekend with my old Toshiba laptop. The A doesn't work, the N doesn't work, the number 7 doesn't work unless you go up to the letters up at the top. The number key 7 doesn't work. The enter key doesn't work, and I think there's one other key that doesn't work as well. I work around it because I can use the mouse, and I'm using Excel mostly anyway when I'm on the road. But I should have had my brand new Alienware i7 17-inch screen computer. I ordered it. It was supposed to be delivered on October 14th, but guess what? It didn't arrive. They don't know when it's gonna arrive. And we don't know. And I understand some of you have had some delays getting your reports. We are expediting that as best we can. Most of the people that are being delayed are in Canada. Some are in the United States, not many, about a half a dozen. Most of them are in Canada because the shipments to Canada have to go through France and they have to go through Montreal. And they're being stolen right out of the mail at those two locations. It is illegal, but they're still doing it. We will figure out a way to get around it. Don't worry, your stuff is going to come. Yes, Trucker Will, he's on Twitch. Yeah, the laptop was $3,300. And, of course, I bought it through eBay. eBay is not going to refund me the money. eBay says, the UPS says that they have delivered the computer, which they didn't. Everyone knows who buys through eBay, anything over $750 requires photo proof of delivery, that they take a picture of it on your doorstep, and it requires a signature. And they don't have either one of those. All they have is the tracking number, and the tracking number says that it was delivered, but it was never delivered. So we're going around and around, and I may have just thrown $3,300 up a horse's ass. But I can't afford to do that very often, and neither can you. The situation has resulted in shipping containers taking 3 times as long to get through the ports on the West Coast. The ports on the East Coast seem to be working okay. Earlier this month, the Virtual Joe released a statement saying it received confirmation from UPS, FedEx, Walmart, and other companies, as well as the Port of Los Angeles, to increase the number of shifts to deal with the backlog of container ships, labor shortages, and warehousing issues. Again, they have missed the boat. They're getting misinformation. If the cranes don't move, the shipping containers, A, don't come off the ships, and B, they don't get put on trucks. You don't just back a truck up and grab a shipping container. They're not on wheels. You have to bring your cart, behind your truck, whether you're carrying a 20, a 40, or a 53. That's the length of the shipping container. There are little posts, 4 posts, and the crane picks up the shipping container and drops it on those posts, and off it goes. That's why it's so efficient. That's why it's so fast. But the cranes are not moving. That's the thing. That's the key. They're missing it, and I'm hitting it. If the private sector doesn't step up, we're going to call them out and ask them to act. That's Virtual Joe threatening the private sector again. It isn't the private sector. It's another force. The federal government said it will be working with multiple stakeholders across the supply chain for a 90-day period until the end of the year in an effort to alleviate the bottlenecks. But and I know exactly what happens when the federal government reaches out to open up a bottleneck. Squeezes down even tighter. Nothing moves. Nothing moves. Like Joe Biden's clenched fist syndrome. That's, by the way, a syndrome that goes along with Alzheimer's disease. Is a clenched fist. You clench your fist. It's a technique to try to stimulate your memory, to focus on what's being said so your mind doesn't wander to, oatmeal or pudding for lunch. John D. Porcari, he's the port envoy to the Biden-Harris supply chain disruptors, another wokester. Are you ready for this? I have to try not to throw up here. Quote, I support the actions taken by the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach today to charge ocean carriers for lingering containers on marine terminals, because he's going to get part of the money. These actions aim to expedite the movement of goods and reduce congestion in our ports. Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. You remember back when the Gutenberg press was invented? You remember this? One of the ways that printers made money is that they printed Bibles, hence the Gutenberg Bible, the reason. But this was illegal. And what was happening is they were printing the Bibles underground, and they were selling them. And then the church had put a bounty on the Bibles. So what they were doing is gathering up the Bibles and they were burning them, right? They were burning the Bibles. And after several months of this, almost a year of this, the church officials snatched up a few people that they had taken their Bibles 2 or 3 times and burned them and said, who the holy hell is buying all these books? Who's paying for them? And they said, well, you are. the bounty was higher than the printing cost of the Bible. And so what the people would do is they would have 3 Bibles printed, and they would let the church burn 2 of them, and they get the 3rd one free. The church, by putting the bounty on the Bibles, probably did more to proliferate the printed Bible in the heathen tongue of English than anyone else. Just like the U.S. government is putting a fine on shipping containers, and everybody except China is going to make money on that bounty. You want to see things slow down? You just watch. It's going to be fun. All right, we're going to get ready to go into... can I cover this? No. So I'm going to give a 3-minute warning to all of my friends on YouTube. You need to look down here in the description, okay? Just open it up. It's right there on the live feed that you're watching. And if you look there, you're going to see links to other fine free speech platforms. There's Rumble, there's Twitch, there's Twitter, there's Facebook. I mean, I don't know how free speech they're going to stay, but they are right now. And Google routinely violates our civil rights by blocking our free speech. And let's not forget DLive. A lot of people go to DLive, and the stream can be pretty good. If a whole bunch of you get on there, it can slow down, but so far it's so good. So let's do this. Now, we'll say good night to YouTube. So there's still a lot of people on there, but you know what to do, okay? You can either bail and go watch, the Braves beat the Astros, if that's what's going to happen tonight, or you can switch to one of the other free speech platforms. So good night.